Welcome to In the Author Studio. My name is Sean Moffitt of Future Proofing Next, where we bring to you some of the best thought leaders, some of the best authors throughout the world that are making waves in innovation, transformation, and change. I'm really happy today to be bringing somebody from Europe. I think Soren might be our first European author. I'm going to have to do a double check on that. And he has just published a book called Death by Innovation Theater. It's about 10 corporate innovation lessons learned by a startup. And this is for real practitioners. He was a former practitioner. He was editor-in-chief of one of Denmark's largest media firms focused on finances. He ran a company called ERNIT for about 5 years. He had this nice, cushy corporate job and then went and decided to do a startup. And a lot of his book is about that very fact, about his 5-year journey and what he learned. And I think there's some lessons that you can impart from startups. And we can probably learn some things as corporates as well. He's also raised millions of dollars in that firm as well. So I'll be really intrigued to understand, okay, this was almost like a cathartic odyssey as I was reading it. So with no further ado, I will introduce to our audience, Soren Nielsen. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And you're hailing to us from Denmark today, Soren?
Yes, I am. And it's snowing outside right now in April.
Wow, this is a strange thing that a Canadian who I am in April, who tends to get the random snow, is living in pretty much 15 degrees Celsius heat, and you're having a snow. So the tables are turned.
Yes.
Let's get right into your book, because I'm fascinated by it. I was both reading, when I originally got in touch with you, I was reading the title behind it where I'm like, oh, this should be good. And then I started reading it and I just started nodding my head. And one of my thoughts was, wow, I wonder why he wrote this. Is it guidance for startups not to do what he did for 5 years, or is it guidance to corporates to not inflict the pain that was inflicted on you over the course of 5 years? Which one was it?
Well, I guess that it all started actually as a really personal notebook kind of thing, just writing down what I experienced, like kind of saying what actually went wrong here. And it was mostly for my own sake in the beginning. And then suddenly I just saw this pattern. I thought, hey, this just can't be true. It can't be true that so much effort is going into innovation and it's just going down the drain. So it's written primarily for startups to not do the same mistakes as we did. But I guess there's a lesson or 10 for corporates in it as well.
And how much of it? It's funny because I've been to South by and I've been to all these Silicon Valley kind of pitch contests or whatever. And we were talking afterward, after I had initially got in touch with you. How global is this phenomenon? Does this whole dance between startups and corporates happen everywhere? What's your sense of it? Maybe you've got a sense of it after the book's been out now too, in terms of people coming to you.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of response on it from all over the world, like people both from corporate side, from investors, from consultants within the innovation industry, and also from startups saying, yes, this is so true. We've never really had the ability to frame it, but with the word innovation theater, yes, that's exactly what's going on, right? So I think it is a global phenomenon. I'm not sure, like my experiences are primarily coming out of the financial industry, from the fintech industry, right? And a lot of that can be also driven by some of the regulatory stuff that's going on in Europe, where the regulatory parts are kind of forcing the banks into opening up to third parties, to startups, to fintechs. And through that, also forcing innovation into an industry that is not that innovative, just to be honest here. So I guess it might be something that's really also happening within the financial industry and within Europe. But I've gotten so many different approaches from other people that's saying, yeah, that's exactly what we're experiencing as well, and that goes from everybody from startups to corporates.
Well, I'll get later in our interview, I'll kind of query you on what needs to change. But I think on this one, I want to get some context for the people that are listening here, because it was funny as I was reading, and I think there was some profile about you driving halfway across Denmark to go to a contest or a kind of a speed dating thing at a bank. And it turns out, the CEO wasn't there, but a whole bunch of juniors and somebody that was just like there 2 days into their new job or something. And so it felt like, oh, I've had that before. I've been a 4-time startup founder. I know what that feels like. So I guess one of the questions is this catharsis for you? Is this writing it down? Is this like, oh, my personal bio revealed to all and it feels good to process the learnings yourself? Like how much of this is just a really good individual downloading of what actually happened?
But that's exactly what it is in the beginning for me. It's just writing down what actually happened and kind of getting a perspective on it, and just the whole process of writing things down for me personally is really giving. So that means that I'm making it concrete from some thoughts in my head into something that's concrete on a piece of paper. So yes, it's been a really a good experience for me myself. It's been the best build, measure, learn experience, just to keep the startup lingo that I've ever had. So yes, that it's definitely been that type of journey for me. But then it ended up in a place where I can just see some patterns that I really hope that others will not fall into. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody with this book. I'm really pointing at myself mostly, and saying, okay, I was actually one of the reasons why this happened, but please, let's not waste each other's time this way, and by making this type of innovation theater.
I was going to just one small follow up there. Like the five closest people to you during this whole 5-year odyssey of ERNIT, what have they said about the book? Like, what's been their reaction?
Yeah, that was actually some of the things that I wouldn't say I was nervous, but I was kind of like, how is this going to be perceived once it kind of gets out there? Because I have a huge network, both within investors, but also within banks. I'm working at a company called Sobio, which is a fintech. We're working with banks, and hell, I worked with banks when I was with ERNIT as well. So a lot of the people that I've worked with at the banks have actually come to me and said that, yeah, we know that was what was happened. We didn't do it deliberately, and nobody does this deliberately. It just happens. So I think that some of these are reaching out to me. I also had an investor who said, this is a spicy topic that you're writing about, but it's an important topic. So I think in that sense, I'm kind of pushing into something that is hurting a little bit for a lot of people, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it resonates with me for sure. I know in previous, I still use it, I think, in previous PowerPoint decks, there's two enemies from a corporate standpoint, status quo, which is an enemy, and innovation theater, which is an enemy. Like it almost is status quo with a little bit of sprinkle dust on it. So how do you define death by innovation theater? I know you have a short description. It's pretty self-definitional, but maybe there's some thoughts for our audience here. What's your definition here?
Yeah, I guess my definition is really that you entertain with creative ideas. That's been the main feeling of this. So it's very much a feeling that I've had, that I've been put on stage to kind of entertain a group of people within a conference room while the lunch was served, and people were like kind of shouting through the napkins. Nobody was listening to what I was saying. I was just there to entertain, and that's just a pattern I've seen again and again. And I think one of the things that I've seen the most is actually this decoupling of the innovation departments or innovation labs with the rest of the company. Went to South America to work with one of the biggest banks out of South America. Actually, I was there for a week in a short accelerator program. Came to the office. Nobody heard about my hosts when I talked about who I was going to meet. And when I finally got to meet the people that were going to host me, and we walked through the bank, everybody was going around in nice suits, white shirts, blue shirts, and way down at the bottom, we opened up the door, and in here there was like light colors, like yellow and green on the walls. There were bean bags everywhere. There were whiteboards. It was a totally different environment, a totally different world than the rest of the bank. And of course, absolutely nothing came out of that week in South America.
Oh, you're picking at a festering sore here, right? Because I've talked a lot about edge and core organizations, right? I don't know if you have a thought or a theory on that. Can innovation inside a larger company, some of the ones that you probably had chatted to and maybe profiled just right now, can they exist as almost orbits or satellites around the main company and live on the edge and still be productive? Or do they always at some point have to become part of the core?
I think definitely the latter. I don't believe that you can work on an isolated island with an innovation without any red tape, without any sense of the real world, and then just suddenly just take it from that imaginary land and then put it into the hands of the operations, of the everyday operations. And I've seen it too many times that I simply don't believe in it. I think you have to have it anchored within this time the bank or the bigger enterprise from the very beginning. And I can give you an example of it. I think one of the issues, for instance, with pilots, there's nothing wrong with pilots. We've done a bunch of pilots with ERNIT, and we're also doing pilots with Subio, where I'm working today. But we don't do pilots if we don't have buy-in from the mothership from the beginning, which means that we don't do a pilot without we've talked about the pricing once we go live in the mothership, right? Whereas with ERNIT, we kind of stopped talking about pricing until we kind of talked about the price for the pilot, and then it was kind of its own little entity, and we didn't move further than the pilot. And I think that is death by innovation theater. If you just do pilots and just do it with the budget that the innovation department has, then you're not going to move further from that.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. I think now for people that know me, they know I love lists. Your subline or tagline to your book is a list of 10 different lessons from your 5 years of intensive study on this. I'm not too sure if we got the time luxury to go through all 10, but is there a gold, silver, bronze medal? Can we tackle some of the most pernicious parts of death by innovation theater?
Yeah, but I think the part about the innovation islands, I think that's the biggest part. I really think that we need to address that we can't have these innovation islands that are separate from the rest of the company. And I've also seen people working within innovation within these big corporate machines, kind of wanting to separate themselves from the rest of the company and calling themselves innovation clowns. So I mean, if you're calling yourself an innovation clown, then the rest of the company will never take you seriously. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that is around this. So that would be my number one. I don't know if we have time to offer number two, but I can.
Let's go through a couple at least. I'm liking the islands piece, and I'll ask another question in terms of somebody that becomes an innovation clown, and maybe not with that same vernacular. What do they do now that you've learned all this stuff? But let's tackle a couple more different ones.
Yeah. But I think the second one I want to mention is really if you fall in love with technology, it's a big issue if you are falling in love with the technology instead of falling in love with the problem. And with ERNIT, we fell in love with the Internet of Things, so IoT. And then afterwards we found the problem. So I think that it's a classic that you find a solution, you fall in love with a solution, and then you find the problem afterwards. So that's very much from the startup's perspective. I think that the falling in love with technology is just a huge issue.
Now it's funny because you raised millions of dollars behind this. So not only did you bamboozle yourself, you bamboozled other people in terms of believing your solution before the problem was identified. Is that part and parcel of the whole capital raise? If you, I know for a long period of time, probably 4 or 5 years ago, if you put blockchain behind anything, you got money just because that was the hottest thing in town. Is there a little bit of a vanity? I need to attach myself to that new word, and so people will throw money around frivolously despite not acknowledging the problem that you're trying to solve?
It's a huge issue. Is that you're talking about these buzzwords and you're putting them in, and they give you money. It's like that. That's where I see the symbiosis of startup, corporate, and also investors is a huge part of it. And I guess the media industry is also a part of it, because suddenly you fall in love with these new words. It can be blockchain, it can be big data, it can be artificial intelligence. We have all these different, and if you're not saying some of these words when you're presenting, then it's kind of like the investors are getting kind of blank, right? They want to hear those words. And the funny thing is actually with ERNIT, at one point we took out the IoT part of our solution, and because we could see that we had fallen in love with the solution and not in the problem, and we saw that the problem could actually be solved without the IoT. But when we took away the IoT, then the investors went away. Then the corporates went away. And then the media also went away.
It's so, wow, that is a riddle trapped in an enigma solved by a puzzle there. Why don't we tackle one more thing, because I do want to give credence to what is a well-written book. What's a third thing on your list of demons?
Oh yeah, what's the third thing? I think the part about vanity metrics is also a part that you have to be aware of, and it's kind of linked to what we talked about before as well. Because I hear so many startups and also corporates talking about their new innovation getting so and so many downloads. Well, it doesn't matter how many downloads that it's getting. It matters how many people are using it, how many active users are actually using it. But because downloads, for instance, is easy to understand for the media, for the internal culture, it becomes the measurement. But actually, it can just be like that bucket of water that you're just pouring more and more water into through marketing, and then there's these huge holes, and all the users are just going out of the bucket, right? So I think vanity metrics is definitely a part that's an issue within the innovation theater.
I find with startups as well, one thing and I've played in both worlds, startup and corporate, but one thing I rail against when people have their press releases and tell people how well they're doing is the amount of capital they've raised. And for me as a business person, that either means, one, you were attached to a number of people, maybe you're a second or third time entrepreneur and you're parlaying some previous relationships, or as you've just said, you've traded in some of your elevator pitch cards for some money. It has absolutely no bearing on how successful you might be as a startup, or if customers are getting traction off your stuff. So I don't know if
but that's it. Like, you know, that's what we also were victim at with ERNIT. Same can you say about awards? We won so many different awards, but at the end of the day, I couldn't pay my own bill or the salary of my employees with those awards.
Yeah.
So I think that you can push for those different things, and they give you marketing, which is also good. So then treat it as marketing, then treat it as awareness. Right. I think that's good enough. But where we were stupid was that we actually thought that could give us a business that was profitable at the end of the day.
I got one question too, because I know in Silicon Valley, which I pre-COVID I used to go to 2 or 3 times a year, they almost wear it like a badge of honor. Like I've failed someplace and I've come out looking better on the other side. I find my Canadian sensibility, I think Europe's a little bit similar to this. We treat failure and mistakes with a little bit of a different type of bent to it. I'm not too sure how tolerant we are. Maybe we should be more tolerant. From a Danish perspective, what's the tolerance level for coming out with a book that says, oh yeah, we made a few mistakes here and we want to broadcast this to the world so others don't? Like, do they treat you almost like a prodigal son? Thank God you've told us this. Or do they treat you like, oh, like, why weren't you like another successful corporate executive over here and played it safe?
Yeah, that is a good question. But I think the response that I've gotten from the, let's say the startup community as a whole has been very, very positive, because I'm kind of saying that the emperor has no clothes on, right? So that's I guess the response from the people that matter to me has been really, really positive, saying that, okay, finally somebody's saying this. But we do have in Denmark in particular, we have what we call the law of Jante. And the law of Jante is actually that you are not supposed to think that you are anything. And this just proves that yeah, you shouldn't have tried to do this, right? You shouldn't take a risk. You shouldn't try to become more than you are. So that's a type of mentality that we have in Denmark in particular, which I of course also had in the back of my mind when I made the book. And I was kind of like, when I pressed the publish button, yeah, I'm gonna have to face that as well.
Now, I'm going to take you back to 2015, or maybe put it in 2021 lenses. Like, this never happened, but you have the advantage of the experience of 5 years of doing this. We'll take it from 2 different points of view. From a startup founder, so you create ERNIT 2, whatever that is. I'm sure you've got ideas in your head. Maybe you're planning it right now as we speak, but I'm sure the good folks at Subeo are probably going, I hope not. But what would be the number one piece of advice you'd give Soren from 5 years ago?
man, that's a tough question right there. So the number one advice would still be to do it, because it's been the best ride of my life, professional life, really. I think it's given me so much insight into what I can do and what I can't do. So I think that like from a short-term perspective, I would say you should still do it. But I think you're asking more about also, if you do it, what would you do different?
Yeah.
And I guess what I would do different was that I would not spend as much time on pitching. Like I would understand that the vanity metrics that we talked about before, I would understand that they were just vanity metrics and not something that actually created value. I think that's one of the biggest learnings from myself. And it took us a long time to understand that the money you raise, the downloads you get, they don't mean anything. It's the users. How many are using your product? How many active users do you have? That's the real value on it. And I have to say that fake it until you make it, I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you have an interesting background on this one too, as editor-in-chief, which you were of a media company before you started this up. It's a different sensibility, right? Sometimes entrepreneurs get involved because they're technologists and they just love the code, and their blind spot is they have no lens into what is the customer need or job to be done, or whatever kind of vernacular you want to use. You probably had more of a sensibility around the customer. I mean, as an editor-in-chief, you probably have a sense of, audiences and what makes them go. Like, was there a different blind spot for you on this one than maybe a classic technologist turned innovator?
Maybe I'm very purpose driven as a person. I think that a lot of journalists, I'm a journalist by profession, so I think a lot of journalists are very purpose driven. They do things because of a higher purpose, and the higher purpose in this was in ERNIT was to actually teach my daughter about financial, giving her financial literacy, right? Giving her the ability to understand the concept of money. And I'm still that naive. I'm still that type of person that loves the Pippi Longstocking quote of I've never tried that before. I'm probably pretty good at it. That's still in my DNA, and I still believe in that. I believe in purpose, and I believe that purpose can drive business as well. But maybe that's my blind side. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather have that blind side. It seems a little bit more noble-minded than just falling in love with bits and bytes. But I'm going to ask you to take the position of somebody else now. So, those innovation clowns that you talked about 10 minutes ago, you're a chief innovation officer, or somebody that's, they've appointed you to steward the change agenda of this anywhere from 50,000 to 500,000 person company. That person, what's the best piece of advice you should be giving that person now?
The best piece of advice I would give that person would be to take the innovation department and make it a core part of the company that they're working in. Don't take it out and make beautiful colors and bean bags and white and whiteboards if it's not part of the culture of the company. So I think that it starts with culture here. If you don't have the culture of innovation, and you don't have the respect from the rest of the company for innovation, then it's going to be very, very tough. I remember this summer, we didn't have much money last summer when I went on vacation. So we rented an auto camper for the first time ever, and we found these free places that we could go and sleep for the night. And one of the places was with a farmer. And the farmer was very proud of his farm. We got there and he showed us all the different things that he had, the apples that he was growing, the machines that he had, and he also had cows. And he told us that when he got a new set of calves, a new set of small cows, then he actually put them in this type of playground pit, or whatever you want to call it, right? And then they put an electric fence around that to imitate what it looked like when the cows were put on the big field, when they were big cows, right? So they very, very quickly learned that the electric fence was bad. Don't go in there. I would say to that person within the innovation to put up that type of electric fence very, very early on, so that people don't think that they can go anywhere that they want.
Interesting, without the shock factor. So at least we're looking out for employee health here. But
yeah, you get the drift, hopefully. But I think it's important that you don't create this universe as an innovation that is totally free and has no boundaries. I think it still needs boundaries and needs to have an imitation of what the real world looks like. But you shouldn't be punished as much as when you do things in the real world, right? But it has to have the same type of sense.
Constraints are wonderful things sometimes, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two, just now that we've got into our discussion, I know I didn't mention these to you ahead of time, but two big questions that come out of what I've heard so far. One, can corporates do innovation? Like, is there something anathema to how corporates run that makes it extraordinarily difficult? And this is a question I spend a lot of time looking at. I'm like your Pippi Longstocking here, where I have an on-faith belief that they can, but they have to have the right conditions. Maybe you have a different sensibility about this, given your experience.
I think they can. I think they can, but I think they have bigger issues with doing innovation. Of course, I can only like kind of lean up against some of the theory that I've read around this as well, like the innovator's dilemma. That of course that there's going to be issues when you have an operations that is driving revenue, and then suddenly you have to take things out of that revenue to go somewhere else, and put a dent in the universe there instead, or you have to kind of switch resources. And it's going to be even more difficult if you're kind of getting pressed by COVID-19, or you're getting pressed by the financial crisis. Then suddenly resources are even more scarce, and then you're gonna funnel them towards where the revenue is going to be biggest. Yeah. And I think that's what you as a corporate have to be aware of, is that if you want to have innovation, you have to prioritize it, and you have to put in the resources to make it as well. I think that's the biggest hurdle here. And one of the things that we experienced again and again in the ERNIT experience was, for instance, with developers, the developer experiences or developer resources are always scarce. And it was almost impossible to get developer resources to do implementations with our product, for instance, right? So that's because they had to do all the other things that the bank needed to do, right? And that's, I think, if you want innovation, you have to have the resources to do it as well.
Yeah, it's tough to keep the trains running on time and then build new track at the same time, right? So, and then one pervasive question that comes to my head now, you're back into the I'm not too sure how large of a company Subio is, but you're back into a corporate styled gig again. Are you a better leader, executive, manager now than you would have been 5 years ago if you didn't have this experience?
Yes, I would definitely say yes. I just talked the other day with one of our board members at Subio, whom I also know from my prior experience from ERNIT, who said that yeah, me personally, that I had grown and become a different type of leader as well. I think maybe a bit of that Pippi Longstocking part has been kind of taken out of me. I'm still that little girl, but I'm not as much as I was before. So I think definitely I'm a better leader, and I'm taking better decisions, especially on the pilot side, and also how I frame the company that we work in. So we're a company of around 35 people. I deliberately try not to call us a startup, both externally and internally. We're a company. We have a product that is being used and being worked today. So if we call ourselves a startup, then we will be looked at as a startup. We will be paid as a startup. We will be put into pilots as a startup. And I don't believe that that's the route for the state that this company is in right now. It can be for really early stage companies, but not where we are right now.
Yeah. I got a rapid fire round of questions we ask all the authors that come into the author studio. But before I do, maybe one parting question would be, I found your note about creating some financial literacy as a purpose for your daughter and writing the book, quite compelling. Is there other aspirations or thoughts in terms of the book, in terms of where you'd love to take it, or where it goes, or who it gets read by?
It's my first book, and it's been kind of intimidating just to make it, because I guess it's been kind of something that I've, as a journalist again, it's something that I'd like to make a book, and then now I've made a book. Now it's out there, and I, of course, as many people as possible that can read it would be fantastic. But I think if I can just make a few of the corporates and a few of the startups not make the same mistakes as we did, that's the biggest purpose of the book. It's really giving back to a community that's giving me so much, and if we can make some innovative, new, creative products instead of just making this innovation theater, I would be so happy.
Yeah. No, well, certainly, in having read a lot of it, I think it was a very compelling concept. I was brought into the book based on just your title and the concept itself. I think it's something we all nod our head to, and you dove deep into it. So congrats on that, and kudos on just doing a biographical on this, because oftentimes we look at startups and we think about the Zuckerbergs in the world, and it's like, I can be that guy one day. And for every Zuckerberg, there's 99 other people out there still having questions on their mind and having had an experience maybe similar to yours. So I think they'll enjoy this book. Are you ready for the rapid fire round, Soren? Welcome into
let's just go anyway.
All right. In however arena or perspective you want to answer these, what is overhyped?
What is overhyped? Getting a puppy. I guess my daughter is talking about nothing else but getting a puppy. Like right now during Corona, it seems like everybody's getting a puppy, and there's like lines of people trying to get a puppy here in Denmark. So yeah, that has to be overhyped at the moment.
Now, post-pandemic, I worry about all these pets. Like, I think the dog walking business is going to be extraordinarily thriving come a few months' time when we're all vaccinated. What's underhyped? What's not getting nearly enough press?
I guess the opposite of the whole pay now, buy later movement. I'm not a big fan of the pay now, buy later movement. So it's I like the concept of save now, buy later instead, which I see some hashtags coming around. So please more of that.
Favorite quote?
I'm gonna have to go with the Pippi Longstocking quote. I've never tried that before. I'll probably be pretty good at it.
I love it. All right, staying consistent. Favorite stat?
Favorite stat?
I know, I'm always torn whether I should send these questions ahead of time or not.
Yeah, I have no idea. Favorite stat?
I'm sure you could throw out a Pareto principle or something at me, but
I don't have a stat from the top of my head.
All right, well, let's keep going then. You have a change maker sepper. You've been all about change for about 5 years. Yeah. Who are you inviting over? Who are the three people you want around that table?
Oh, so 3 people. Yeah. I guess one of them would be Ed Catmull, who's the co-founder of Pixar and also author of Creativity Inc. Really liked the way that he framed the storytelling behind Pixar, and also what I could learn from that. I have to say Simon Sinek as well. I've made a lot of different how to pitch kind of workshops for other startups, and I'm always talking about Simon Sinek and how to have the why, the how, and the what. And then I guess the third one would be for me the author behind Crossing the Chasm. I don't even remember the name of
is that no, it's not Everett Rogers, it's the other guy. But I know who you're Jeffrey Moore.
Yeah, Jeff Moore. Yeah, exactly. I think I read it not that long time ago, and it just hit me really like that. That's some of the issues that we're struggling with at Subio at the moment. So I think that was really interesting.
If you were 23 again, what would you be doing?
Coding.
Okay.
As a founder of an impact investment startup, I think.
There's going to be one of these interviews where the person's actually 23 that I'm interviewing, so I'm going to have to switch up that question every so often. What's the last time you were blindsided by a marketplace shift?
I guess I was with ERNIT. I have to say, I think that I don't know if this is a market place shift, but I was in big belief that we could put friction into the payment space instead of just having convenience, and convenience just trumps it all. So I think that we were blindsided by how powerful convenience is.
Most inspiring company?
I would have to say Patagonia.
Okay. Ooh, staying consistent on your purpose trail. Any
Yeah.
ones that are off the radar? Any ones that we might not have heard of before? Maybe some kind of Danish company that.
Yeah, I have a Danish company. It's called Matter. They're providing sustainable company pensions.
Wow, interesting. Okay, worthy of further pursuit here. How would somebody describe you as a change or impact maker?
Yeah, I'm a purpose-driven change maker. Like, money is not my driver, but the greater purpose of the changes.
It's 2021. We're 12 months post-pandemic. What's the type of technology or element of change that's really intriguing you now?
Yeah, I guess that impact investments seems to be really on the rise. I don't know if it's overhyped or in a sustainable development, but I think it's intriguing to see, and I think it's interesting to see what's happening in that space.
Last one, and I'll let you breathe. What do you do for fun?
I go sea fishing, and I just caught my first sea trout.
Nice, nice. Is this a relatively new activity, or like you've done this forever?
No, I did it as a child, but now during Corona, I suddenly picked it up again, and yeah, I've already gotten way too much gear and gotten on way too many fishing trips that didn't give me anything. But it's fantastic. It's good for the head.
Well, I'll say this: this has been most enjoyable. I love people that are so honest and forthright, and you're almost tackling the questions the way you've tackled your book, very autobiographical and thinking inside your head. So I appreciate it, Soren. The book, once again, is Death by Innovation Theater, 10 lessons that we can all learn, but particularly for a startup. I want to thank Soren for joining me in the author studio, and please provide us any comments. And if they're for Soren directly, I'm sure we'll find a way to get those back to Soren as well. So Soren, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, until next episode, we'll be seeing you in the future.